My name is Judith Murray, and I introduce myself as Judith Murray. This is my studio, and I also live here. Well, I was born in New York, but I was raised in southern Florida, in Miami Beach, actually. And I came to New York at age 17 to study at Pratt. That was in 1958. The most important thing about the environment that I grew up with was the ocean. We lived very close to the ocean, and I spent all of my free time at the beach. There was no hotels at that time at the beach where I was living, so it was very private and quiet and extremely beautiful. We were a small family, just my older sister and myself. That was it. I think the most important thing that happened to me was I was very ill when I was 8 years old with a blood disease. And it was at a time where there wasn't antibiotics developed or penicillin even. And a neighbor gave me this wooden box, which was a painting kit. And it was an oil painting kit. It was really love at first sight, because up until then, I was using the typical things children use, sort of poster paint, which would dry with flat color and flat surface. And then I had this oil paint, which would be almost sculptural in its effect. You could put it on thickly. If I was painting flowers, the flowers could actually stick out from the canvas board, and the color would maintain vivid hue. And so I love the smell. Thinking back, I wondered if I got high from the smell, but I just loved everything about it. I did woodcuts and, of course, drawings. And I did work also with pen. I think everything at this point is related to my work, except maybe when I'm thinking about gardening. I love to garden, and I'm thinking about fertilizing and watering and all that in relationship to the garden. But everything is really about art. Art is my life. I did teach. When I was younger, I taught at a few different universities, and I found it very satisfying, very important. And I learned things from my students as well as giving them information. I really felt we were a unit, the students and myself. I thought they were incredibly good. There's so much good art around. And I thought the students were serious and wanting to do good work. And those that did would go on, and those that thought it was an easy credit would do something else. Art is not easy. I think right now those people that are in powerful positions are certainly not thinking about art or any kind of morality. I think our leaders are really terrible, and they're hurting an awful lot of people. If more people think in terms of art, whatever art means, in terms of appreciation of all people, which is, I think that's what art is, a great communicator, like music is a great communicator. In certain ways, it could hit all people, all places, all time. If one is united by art, amongst all people. And when I say art, I must include music. Then I think it really can save humanity. I think when I discovered my lifetime pursuit of working with these 4 colors within a certain shape and the right-hand bar, these all came simultaneously, and I never stopped. I just continued from there. The last time I used blue was around 1974, and I think I still have that painting. These colors of red, black, white, and yellow offered me a tremendous amount of variations. In the early days, I strictly used them as pure color of themselves. The more I traveled to sometimes very primitive places, I remember going with a nurse in the Amazon in a dugout canoe, and she was going from village to village to check on people. I would go into the village and look for their crafts, and their crafts were made up of red, black, white, and yellow. And then I saw an exhibition at the Museum of Natural History, and it was an exhibition of cave art. And they had pots of the pigments the cave artists used, and it was red, black, yellow, and white. And I had already been using these colors that I came to intuitively thinking that these were my colors. And then I discovered they were the colors of all time. In fact, the earliest colors. So it just verified what I had already felt. New York City in the 70s was very exciting, and there were so many opportunities. Then there weren't that many artists, and there certainly weren't that many galleries. You could go to every gallery on a Saturday in an afternoon. There were so few, and they were all basically in one neighborhood. There were a few factories that were still active. Soho at that time was extremely quiet because when the workers left the neighborhood, there was nothing here except a few artists that moved in because of the space. I think it's twofold. I think that I learned so much when I moved to New York and I went to art school and was exposed to that generation of art and the abstract expressionists. And so I think being in New York was really vital for my development. It has changed so much. When I first was living here and working here, I used to have to give a taxi instructions on how to get to Soho. It was not heard of. And now, of course, it's the opposite. All of my life in art has been just great. It's really a wonderful thing to do, a wonderful thing to focus on. I'm excited for the young artists that are coming up, because the life is a good life. You go through some hard times, but one thing about artists, they have a lot of tenacity, and they just keep going. It's worth it. In my studio, it's my most comfortable place, right where you see me. I'm one of those people that when I wake up, I'm immediately awake and alert. I'm not a slow waker. I'm a fast waker. And that's when I look at my emails and I take care of any kind of correspondence. I generally feel good, and plan my day. And in the middle of the night, I'll think about a painting that I thought was finished and realized it was not. This painting, I realized in the middle of the night that I wanted to add something to it. So as soon as I woke up in the morning, I came in and I added it. This painting, by the way, in the beginning, all my work is layered. It's many, many layers. There's a lot going on. I'm very satisfied with what I do. I'm very satisfied with those that I love. I have a great husband who I respect, who's a wonderful artist. What more do you need? But we've always had very separate studios, which I think is really important when two artists are together, but especially for women. Women need their own place, their own studios, and privacy is probably the most important thing for an artist to have. In some ways, it's a help being with another artist, because if I say to him, I need a few days to be private and work on my paintings and think my thoughts, he understands it. And he's not in any way threatened by it. In fact, he has the same needs as I. When you're young, though, there is a certain amount of competition. So that makes it a little bit sketchy. But that is not really important. And that's a very passing thing. Most of the time, there's a real understanding of what each other is going through, because we've all experienced the same things. Artists never retire. They either go blind or die. But I'm having this big show. So as soon as these are out, I'm working on my next. And then when I have enough work, I'll have another show. So that's my future, is rather repetitive of my past, except maybe because of my age, I'm just loving it even more. It's a wonderful life. I hope anyone who is hearing this, who wants to be an artist, they'll just be inspired to get past all the hard times and just move on, because it's really great. As I say to anyone who's working as a young artist, just keep working. It's only the beginning. From working, you get ideas for the next. Or from looking at art, all of a sudden, you steal someone that you're looking at, and you reinterpret it in terms of what you want and what your needs are. So look at art and make art. It's such a different time now for young artists. I have two assistants who are both artists in their 20s, and they finding it difficult to find studios, to find living quarters. There's so many galleries, so many, it's a different time. But like we all, one adjusts and one finds their way, and they will find their way. No one's going to stop making art. The most primitive of primitive cultures make art. In New York City or wherever, we are all primitive enough to continue making art. You're at the beginning of your journey. So you have to, in a way, shut your eyes and just focus on what you're doing and try to do the best you can with that. And when you have disappointments, you just pick yourself back up and continue on. You know, that's the key. Don't let them win. Don't let them win. You have to continue. These are not illustrating anything external. But I remember when someone, he might have been a plumber, was walking through my studio, and he stopped. He got caught by a painting, and he stopped. And he's looking intensely. And he says to me, I know it's not a chair. I know it's not a person. But it reminds me of something inside me, and I don't know what it is. That's what my work is about. I always, every once in a while, listen to Bach's unaccompanied cello. And so maybe I think of myself as an unaccompanied cello.